When a localized human terminal executes the final variable assignment equation, the absolute realization of Tat-Tvam, or I am that, it verifies that it is running the exact same source code as the universal cloud server. Statistically, flooding finite local hardware with an infinite stream of cosmic data should result in an immediate system crash. The circuitry should burn out. To understand why, we examine the ancient multiversal root of this operating system, depicted here as the central consciousness managing trillions of galactic data points. Instead of a blue screen of death, the localized hardware scales to match the server. It enters a state of absolute system overdrive. The Sanskrit texts describe this specific state as Madaśālinī. This is often mistranslated as a mystical trance, but in a systems engineering context, it describes a machine operating at frictionless, absolute peak capacity. This holographic table maps ancient Sanskrit spiritual terminology directly to modern hardware equivalents. If we isolate this sequence of names, 431 through 440, we get a step-by-step diagnostic manual of a physical body running infinite processing power. We are going to deconstruct 3 distinct mechanical subsystems detailed in this block: processing telemetry, thermal stabilization protocols, and root battery architecture. Reframing these ancient texts through the lens hardware provides a structural model for how localized processing scales to handle infinite data. A common misconception equates the term MADA, or intoxication, with human malware, alcohol, erratic behavior, or a loss of physical control. In spiritual engineering, MADA is an infinite overclock. It is entirely dependent on how the system allocates its available RAM. This chart shows normal human hardware processing data. The power is monopolized by a highly inefficient background task called the ego. When that background task is deleted, RAM usage plummets to near zero. High-voltage cosmic energy instantly surges into the freed capacity. Flooding a localized terminal with this level of cosmic power physically alters the mechanical behavior of its external sensors. We see this most clearly in the primary optical sensors, the eyes, when the system achieves perfect equilibrium. The text identifies this precise telemetry state as name 432, Madaghūrṇita-raktākṣī. Standard human visual tracking frantically locks onto specific targets, burning energy to render individual data points. Gyroscopic telemetry operates completely unfixed. The sensors execute a continuous fluid sweep. They process all incoming data fields dynamically, without attaching to or lagging on any single node. The engineering advantage here is pure latency elimination. The hardware processes the entire network simultaneously. True system freedom requires the processing power to observe every variable in the environment at exactly the same time, without a single millisecond of lag. Pushing a CPU into an extreme overclock requires an immediate hardware intervention. You have to upgrade the cooling system. Running intense spiritual voltage through an unpurified biological chassis will literally fry the central nervous system. Name 433 describes the visible symptom of this danger: flushed cheeks, which indicates peak thermal output, or tejas. Look at this thermal imaging silhouette. Pushing peak capacity into an unprepared physical plane causes dangerous heat to bloom across the circuitry. Without immediate intervention, this thermal buildup results in permanent hardware degradation. The system's automated failsafe is defined by name 434, Chandanadrava Digdongi, the deployment of premium thermal paste. Chandanadrava translates to liquid sandalwood. In Vedic engineering, this is the absolute standard for profound, penetrating physical stabilization. When this specific liquid cooling protocol is applied directly to the overheated circuitry, the threat of a core meltdown is neutralized. The top-tier coolant drops the system's temperature back into perfectly chilled, stabilized operational parameters. Sustaining high-frequency spiritual voltage requires a physical chassis capable of absorbing the load. Without rigorous stabilization, the hardware is functionally incompatible with the surge. With the physical chassis chilled and stabilized, we can look at the logic controller managing this newly overclocked system. In high-level systems architecture, skill is never defined by exertion or hard work. Skill is exclusively defined by efficiency. Here is a block of poorly optimized logic. It spans thousands of lines, consumes massive memory pools, and generates immense systemic friction. The exact same complex task can be executed in 3 elegant lines, drawing almost zero power and executing instantly. This zero-friction protocol is named 436 Kushala, the master algorithm. The mother continuously renders entire multiverses, manages the karmic data of trillions of nodes, and regulates the physics engine of reality. She executes all of these complex cosmic tasks simultaneously, without generating a single drop of systemic friction. She maintains this pristine efficiency through name 435, an affinity for highly specific, uncorruptive frequency tuning. When a localized human terminal syncs with the Kushala protocol, their physical actions drop all frantic movement. They enter the ultimate flow state. If an action requires immense physical struggle and generates friction, it is entirely disconnected from the master algorithm. This brings us to the final paradox of the teardown. Achieving infinite, frictionless cloud processing demands an absolutely rigid, localized hardware anchor. The motherboard's multiversal reach is vast, but the system must maintain a perfect ground state to avoid dissolving into data entropy. Name 439, Kuleshvai, acts as the sovereign administrator overseeing this foundational structural matrix. The text points to the exact anatomical and architectural coordinates of this physical anchor point. It is name 440, Kula Kundalaya. This is the deep battery cell, located squarely at the perineum, or Muladhara, at the very base of the spine. This vertical wireframe schematic shows the highest operating frequencies routing all the way back down the conduit, terminating in a secure physical baseline origin point. This is the exact microscopic junction where the coiled potential energy cable, the Kundalini, is physically plugged into the chassis. All infinite potential energy is safely regulated, stored, and managed outward from this single, deeply grounded root cell. An overclocked consciousness relies entirely on perfectly unfixed gyroscopic telemetry, supreme thermal stabilization, a zero-friction master algorithm, and an unbreakable root battery. The diagnostic reveals a state of precise, grounded, and high-velocity engineering. The terminal is stable. System operational. End recording.